Donald Trump is going viral for this clip where he clearly says something very racist about GOP Representative Byron Donalds while on stage, but this clip is bad because it's not the intentional, malicious type of racism that we've seen from Trump in the past, like when he says that VP Harris just recently turned black, or like when he calls for the execution or arrest of the Central Park Five after they were exonerated. This is a more insidious, covert type of racism, like when your older coworker says something about black people and you think about it for a second and you realize they just expose their true feelings, expose themselves as a racist. So this is Donald Trump exposing this deeply entrenched racism that he has within himself, and that's why I think this clip is worse. Let's jump into this video. Make sure you leave a like and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. People think they're subscribed, but they're not. To lay the groundwork, GOP Representative Byron Donalds, you know him, he isn't squeaky clean himself. He has said something to the effect of, at least the black family was together during Jim Crow. And after he made these comments, he immediately got heat from black leaders, black activists, rightfully so. Florida Representative Byron Donalds, a Republican who was seen as a potential running mate for Donald Trump months back, is defending himself amid Democratic criticism of comments he'd made Tuesday suggesting that black families were together during the Jim Crow era of racial segregation. How do you get it so twisted? How do you get it so backwards? Quote, you see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together. Quote, during Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people have always been conservative minded, but more black people voted conservatively, he said. That ended, he suggested, due to a culture of dependence promoted by the federal government's welfare system. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, you go down that road, and that's where we are now. Lyndon B. Johnson, did he pass anything substantial for black people? I can't quite remember, but this brings us to present day, where Donald Trump points out Byron Donalds and says, quote, that one is smart. You have smart ones, and then you have some that aren't quite so good. And some of the comments are really funny really quickly. Ace said, he's racist as hell. Bill DeMaio said, guy just said Byron was, quote, one of the good ones. Can we be done with this weirdo, please? He's not trying to hide it anymore. Trump doesn't even hide his racism anymore. People are calling Donald Trump out, and let's watch this clip.
I'd say, Mr. Congress, oh, look who we have. Byron, stand up, please. Superstar of the future. He's already a superstar, but he's a superstar of the future. Byron Donalds, Florida. Wow, that's nice to have you here. That's good. He's great. He's great. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. That one is smart. You have smart ones, and you have some that aren't quite so good.
And if you've been around people that have this covert type of racism, you know exactly what Donald Trump is saying. I grew up in Indiana, even though my family is quite liberal, quite left-leaning, I grew up around people in my high school that would say stuff about, oh, he's one of the smart ones, he's one of the good ones, and you immediately know that this person has these preconceived notions about black people as a group, and they think that a cool black person that they meet is the exception rather than the norm. And I want to take a second to dissect Donald Trump's actual words here and the harm that can come from them, because outlets like CNN and MSNBC don't take the time to highlight what I perceive as racial undertones in what Donald Trump says. Oftentimes they are too charitable to him when he doesn't deserve it. So let's re-listen to this end of sentence right here.
About that one is smart. You have smart ones, and you have some that aren't quite so good.
So when Donald Trump says at the end, you have some that aren't quite so good, I perceive that as racially charged, because if we look at what Donald Trump has said in the past about the suburbs being attacked, he's talking about black families moving in. There are racial undertones there. Every time Donald Trump talks about rioters or looters, I perceive there to be racial undertones. I think he has the black population segmented in his mind, where he thinks normally black Americans are rioters or looters, or from the Republicans I've talked to, they think black Americans are uniquely lazy or soak up welfare. That's just from Republicans I've talked to. And I think that Donald Trump, when he says word for word, that one is smart, you have smart ones, and then you have some that aren't quite so good, and he's looking at GOP Representative Byron Donalds, I think he's very clearly segmenting parts of the population out in his head. And this is a repeated pattern with Donald Trump. So many times throughout the years, he has shown that he segments parts of the population out and then uses racially charged language. So I'm not just jumping to conclusions about whether or not Donald Trump has racial undertones in his speech. Just look at the way he talks about the suburbs. It kind of reminds me of this clip where Donald Trump slightly misspeaks, but in the process reveals how he feels about black Americans.
In fact, I want to find out what's going on with him. You know what look at my African American over here. Look at him.
And when this happened back in 2015, 2016, people thought that it was just a funny gaffe, but throughout the years, Donald Trump's rhetoric surrounding this issue has gotten much worse. I haven't even brought up the black job stuff that Donald Trump says all the time, and I think part of the reason why Donald Trump is slipping, beginning to lose his mind every single time he takes the stage, is because what do we know about Donald Trump? What bothers him more than being trolled is having people beat him in crowd sizes and ratings. And this article is titled, Harrison Walsh Interview Ratings Nearly Double Trump's Last Big CNN Sit-Down, and this comes at a time when Harrison Walsh are pulling massive crowds, I mean arenas. There was a day 2 of the CNN, we filled an arena in Chicago, and VP Harris went to Milwaukee, and they spoke there, so they filled 2 arenas at once, and that is when Donald Trump really began to slip and talk about crowds. So this is amazing news. The first joint interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate was watched live by nearly 6 million viewers. I kind of wish it was like 15 million viewers, but that's just a dream, pie in the sky. On CNN Thursday night, according to Nielsen data, far outpacing the viewership that turned in last time Donald Trump appeared on the same network. It was a strong night for CNN, which has struggled recently to reach the ratings of Fox News or MSNBC. That's funny, I wonder why. Although it's a much lower audience rating than Harrison Walsh's big DNC speeches, it's still a promising stat for the Harris campaign, and we've talked a lot about Trump this interview. I don't want to make the mistake of only platforming Trump, so I think we deserve to watch Harrison Walsh for a minute.
You have less time to make your case to voters than any candidate in modern American history. The voters are really eager to hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day 1 in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do?
That is a great message, and what I noticed from it is that she uses a lot of forward-looking rhetoric. How can we fix the country, move forward, and have more hope, whereas Donald Trump is always harping on the past. His slogan is Make America Great Again, reverting back to the past, and it comes in stark contrast to VP Harris's We Are Not Going Back, and her rhetoric matches that. The entire time she talks about prioritizing the middle class, which is a type of rhetoric that Democrats need to be using. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, comment a blue heart, and peace out.